Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter.
Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of the CPG Guys podcast. And today we discuss the crazy year 2020 was, and we have a very special guest to help us do specifically that. But before we begin, let me remind our audience to visit cpgguys.com, where they can go find all of our content and do rate us on the Apple podcast by going to ratethispodcast.com/CPGguys. Back in November and December, we ran a one question, one answer series on Instagram. Yes, we actually have an Instagram handle. It's called CPG Guys. And as of 3 weeks ago, we started releasing the Fresh 4 series on IGTV, and which also is included in every episode. Peter and I look at the week that just passed us by, and we pick 4 newsworthy articles that came out from brands, manufacturers, retailers, omnichannel, in-store, you name it, and everything in between. And in 2021, we are going to ask Bryan a question at the end of this episode. You will see if we get to start a new channel. And I want to welcome the king of loyalty, data science, UGC, ratings and reviews, the VP of retail strategy at Power Reviews, which is a ratings and reviews software company. My friend and co-host, Mr. Bond.
Sri, you're the 41 to my Jim Baker, the Reagan to my Thatcher. Somehow we get things done together, and it's been a hell of a year. We're well into the 50 episodes, and as we approach 2021, we've had some tremendous guests, and one in particular that helped us kick off our phenomenally successful podcast is back to join us in looking at how 2020 took place and what we may have in store for us in 2021. So glad to be on the journey with you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And specifically, this is episode 57. Who would have thought? And to welcome back on the show, our special guest who actually helped kick off this podcast back in May of 2020, my friend and a close ally of the show, the SVP of Commerce at Omnicom Retail Group. Welcome, Bryan Gildenberg. We're thrilled to have you back. And again, thank you again for helping us have kicked off this show. You are back to episode 57.
Nice.
Please tell the audience what you do.
That's nice. I'm not sure whether it's the Heinz 57 or Bruce Springsteen's 57 channels and nothing on, but either way, it's good to be back. So glad to bookend this exceedingly odd year for you all and for everybody.
And what we're going to do in this episode is Bryan is going to help us recap the crazy year that 2020 was, and we're going to try and find 5 themes that have emerged in the retail and CPG industry. And then we're going to jump on to 2021, how 2020 has shaped what arguably is going to be one of the most difficult years for retail and CPG, not necessarily by dollar, cents, and volume, but by a whole plethora of changes coming very strategically. So we're going to jump into it right away, Bryan. Again, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And I want to jump towards the first observation that we discussed with you, which I think will be one of the most important ones that happened this year is Walmart has clearly emerged in the omnichannel space this year. Back in January at a top to top, when we were discussing where we would go with this and the presence of the Walmart Media Group to where they are today, having had the line passed through, releasing Walmart Plus, changing the algorithms so that consumers can order products without a minimum order value through Walmart Plus, almost Amazon Prime-like, easy returns through the holidays, and Walmart Media Group seems to be a legitimate contender in the media space, at least at the surface level. Epic, your thoughts? Are they a huge winner this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think you would have to say that one, you always have to put winning in context, given the backdrop that it's happened against. And I think that Walmart has, both as a company and then as an e-commerce player, I think they've both dealt with and overcome some enormous challenges this year. So first of all, just hats off to them and really to all the brick and mortar retailers in particular, as well as Amazon for there were times where without them this country would have been in way worse shape than it was. So with all that, with the broader context kind of established, I think at least two things come to mind. I think number one is, look, 100,000 people have talked about the acceleration of e-commerce during COVID-19, and that's, just because everybody's saying it doesn't always make it incorrect. In this case, it's true. And I think that Walmart, like all companies, was forced to accelerate their digital transformation in ways that they would have never thought possible in January of 2020. And I think to a large degree, have been reasonably successful where they've gotten to. I think there are, I think the big shifts that you've seen with them. Yes, I think Walmart Media Group is becoming an entity where you can start to have a conversation with the Walmart Media Group that looks like a conversation with a media buying platform rather than the media side of an e-commerce, rather than the media side of a retailer. And, the way at Omnicom that we kind of look at this a little bit is that, you've got Amazon, which as a retailer is, far and away the most sophisticated media platform, but, not to belittle Amazon because they've done great work there, but if you're talking to a media buyer, they're kind of top of the Delta Pledge class. I mean, that's their 2.2 GPA, though impressive for context, is Amazon still has a ways to go to where it can be, I think a totally comfortable media platform for people to buy media for a living. Walmart and all the rest of the retailers are behind them a little bit in that space, but the key thing is that what Walmart obviously gets is attention, just because for companies that pay for a lot of the advertising in America, they are a disproportionate share of volume. So, and that's and I think that conversation, which I think we'll talk about Amazon a little bit later, but I think what's going to happen with Walmart, what happened with Walmart is that the upper funnel work you can do with Walmart, it became obvious that that's going to need to be integrated with lower funnel work. And I think the implications for that are almost more interesting than Walmart itself changing, is that because it's such a big part of a CPG company's business, it's going to change the CPG company. So it's like when California changes its emission standards, all of the automobiles in America have to change. If Walmart's going to change the way in which you interact with a retailer, that's going to change everything in terms of how that works. And this blurring of the line between upper funnel and lower funnel is getting to be very real at Walmart, certainly from a planning point of view. And you're now, as part of a Walmart team, required to bring people together that often don't know how to talk to each other. And that's people within your own company, never mind talking to Walmart. So, a media planner has very little experience talking to a key account manager for a category at Walmart. That's just not something either of them have ever really done in their careers. So facilitating that conversation, clarifying what success needs to look like, clarifying how that success gets measured, and understanding that different people that have a different part of the elephant have a very different understanding of what the elephant is. That's the job of a Walmart team leader today. That's a fascinating role change from what it used to be 5 or 10 years ago, which is being able to orchestrate a series of people that have very different objectives, very different time frames in which those objectives are achieved, and very different ways of looking at success. It's a very different leadership skill. So that, I think, is the most interesting thing to me about Walmart in 2020, is what it's going to do and has done to the CPG companies that sell to them. I think what Walmart's doing in omnichannel is a fairly logical transformation from a business that was brick and mortar based to being much more omnichannel and a digital hybrid business, if you will.
Bryan, I just want to ask you a quick follow-up question on media, since we just discussed Walmart and omnichannel.
Sure.
One of the major differences between Amazon, Instacart, and Walmart is those two run on single price auctions, whereas Walmart runs on a straightforward auction bid system.
Yep.
What are you personally more a fan of?
Good question. I would probably frame it up in terms of what you're trying to do. I think for people that are used to buying media, a more dynamic bidding system is something they're just more comfortable with. And I think if Walmart is going to continue to gain legitimate share of media dollars, their bidding system is going to have to become a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more like the way the rest of the media world works. For now, given that Walmart's going to get a disproportionate share of their media dollars from people that understand Walmart, not people that understand media, it's probably fine. So I think it's a horses for courses thing right now. But I think over time, yes, I think you're going to move more towards, I think people are going to try to get closer to what Google and Facebook do.
Bryan, welcome back to the CPG Guys podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. I didn't expect you to die. So,
for the record, my Delta Tau Chi pledge name is Flounder, and your reemergence on the podcast is akin to Kevin Bacon during the initiation ceremony, uttering the words, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?"
I really wanted to be Daniel Simpson Day with my 0.0, but that's fine. So,
Mr. Blutarski, you have no grade point average.
All right, we're going to get way lost in this really quickly. So
let's move on to another big e-commerce player. Yes. Over the last couple of days, Shri and I were celebrating what are arguably, well, actually, you can't even argue, they are the most prestigious.
Oh, of course,
digital omnichannel awards in the industry.
I watched the red carpet celebration on E. It was fantastic.
The Omnies are what everybody waits for every year. So in any event, during that, we recognized.
Actually, Bryan, now that you mentioned it, did the two guys on the show look dapper?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I forgot to compliment Peter on his merch, and Shri, as I said, for not wearing a Yankee cap. I appreciate it.
There you go. In any event, back to 2020, one of the other entities we recognized during the Omnies Awards was in the marketplace category. It was the most improved marketplace. We gave that to Instacart. If we look back at the beginning of 2020, Instacart was predominantly a marketplace for food and beverage retailers, groceries, some alcohol, and what have you. Looking at where they've arrived at the end of 2020, they are arguably the destination for so many different retail channels. Yeah. They've added Sephora, Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart, 7-Eleven, a tremendous year for them. They're gaining distribution. Any retailer that wants to be in e-commerce has to seriously consider joining Instacart. What are your thoughts on this? Are they basically the household name? And where are they going to go next year?
I think, well, look, and we talked about this on one of the first 18 podcasts we did together, but the George R.R. Martin Game of E-commerce series, I probably personally been more bullish on Instacart than most people for longer than most people, just because to me they solve a very simple problem, which is that for retailers that don't want to prioritize e-commerce, especially click and collect e-commerce operationally, they're a very easy solution. And there's a couple of retailers in the United States, notably Costco and Aldi, that have no interest in solving that problem themselves. And Costco and Aldi are two of the most successful retailers in the country. So they have a great moat to work from, which is that they're an e-commerce solution for great retailers that don't want to solve that problem themselves. So, and then the user experience in Instacart is far and away the best grocery shopping user experience you're going to have. So, and as many wise people in tech have always told me, don't bet against good user experience. Like that's the, if you're torn between great user experience, questionable business model, and questionable user experience and great business model, the user experience will figure out the business model before the business model figures out the user experience. I would say I would have probably given most improved marketplace in 2020 to Etsy, actually, because I think Instacart was really good. So to start with, but I do think, yes, I think Instacart is going to be a very interesting question for CPG companies in the future, which is where do you put them? What budget do they come out of? Is it a retailer? Is it a, how do you manage the conversation with Albertsons if you're going to fund Instacart and you're going to have to take money from Albertsons to do that? There's a lot of really interesting questions Instacart poses. And as a platform, they've still got what I would call a really good on-ramp to building more sophisticated promotional and marketing tools. They have a good, but what I would call pretty foundational and rudimentary set now. But you could see Instacart, I think, really developing a lot of very interesting things. I think the one thing that will be interesting in 2021 is a lot of it. Well, no retailer is going to want to do that because they're going to want to own the data. Well, it's not really that hard to envision a world in which Instacart, in return for being able to put 20 people in a store at a time and create a weird, moderately suboptimal shopping experience for the brick and mortar retailer, just agrees to some sort of data sharing platform, and then you're kind of fine. So I'm probably not as worried about Instacart running into the retailers wanting to, quote, own the data, because I think that's a solvable problem. And I really do think that what you're going to find with Instacart is I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if they started to create like a gold tier of retailers. And I don't know this is just a hypothesis. Like, there's no breaking news here. But if I were Instacart, what I would do next is I would identify retailers that I could have a more signature partnership with, where I could start to link more cleverly their data with mine. So, like, for instance, why don't you need to enter your loyalty card? At some point, they're going to pilot a way where the loyalty card that the Instacart shopper uses when they're checking out is yours, and not theirs, and that's going to be an agreed upon and acceptable thing to do. The frustrating thing about Instacart with Costco for me right now is if I buy stuff on Costco, it doesn't count towards my 2% executive membership rebate, which that seems fixable. So I think that what you're going to see is that Instacart for Selected is going to develop a more, and sorry, I told you I was going to blur the 2020 review and the 2021 predictions. But okay. I think that what I think you'll see with Instacart is, if I had to guess, is a more retailer-specific marketing platform for them that does a little bit more from a data integration perspective, integrating the retailer's loyalty program with their data in new and interesting ways. That would be what I would do if I were them. So, but Josh doesn't ask me what he would do because he's doing quite fine.
For our audience, I want to remind everybody that at the Omnies, Etsy did actually get to be one of our picks for the most innovative marketplace. And Bryan, I want to move to a strategic area now. Horizontal companies versus vertical companies and hunting for growth. Would you do us a favor and explain for the audience what that means and why this became such a prominent level of importance in 2020?
Yeah, well, anyone that knows me, which is 7 other people apart from you, know that for years I've been on kind of a quest to try to break down the physical versus e-commerce as the divide in retail. Just because it seemed obvious that at some point that was going to be a less relevant way to look at the problem. And I think that's probably true now. I think e-commerce is, to some degree, if you're working with Walmart or Kroger, it's another format, right? It's a small and emerging format. And for people that are as old as me, we can remember working with Walmart when they were building supercenters, and that was another format. So it was separate for a while, and then it just became part of how you sold to Walmart. So I think that's where that is. I've always been intrigued by a more fundamental divide, not between store formats, which to me, in the grand scheme of things, is not trivial, but not, not the end of the world, and more about how people shop. And, the horizontal vertical thing, to me, is a useful way to do that because it allows you to group different physical and digital platforms together in a way that might be more meaningful. And this has always been the stumbling block that I've had with a retailer like Amazon, because Amazon, when you look at it, it's a wonderful tool. It's a great platform. It's $1.5 trillion company, but it organizes information in a very specific way. And it's what I would call vertical. And for any of us that are old enough to remember the school library and the obligatory Dewey Decimal System training that you had to go through to navigate the school library, basically vertical commerce is the Dewey Decimal System brought to life in shopping. So it's categorized, it's organized, you have categories, you have subcategories, you have subcategories, you have subcategories, then you get to an item. It's vertically integrated so that a logical person could find what they are looking for basically by clicking down through things. And that clicking metaphor is important because we're going to contrast it with something else in a second. But so whether it's a Walmart store where basically every aisle turn is a click, like if you think about it, versus a website, you've got a whole series of retail experiences that are organized vertically. That's Amazon. That's Google search and Google shopping. That's Walmart. That's any grocery store. Anything that's got numbered aisles with sort of a very systematic way of walking through that, that's the Dewey Decimal System. That's a vertically organized retailer. And it is really good for list-based shopping, and it is very good for people that shop logically. So that's fine. So that's the vertical. That's vertical commerce. Horizontal commerce is something different. And the best horizontal brick and mortar retailer in the world, to contrast it, is TJ Maxx. So TJ Maxx has no categorization that I've ever been able to discern. It has no logical organization, and that's fine. Nobody cares, because the shopper going through there isn't clicking. What they're doing in physical store terms is scrolling. So a TJ Maxx trip is much more like scrolling, weirdly a vertical phenomenon, even though we're talking about the horizontal internet. And in the same way that Instagram and Pinterest and even Etsy are more horizontal experiences where you don't move logically, but you move by affinity, you move by connectivity. You kind of chart your own path based on what you're interested in, and whether that's a celebrity, whether that's a color scheme, whether that's a style. It doesn't force you to navigate in a specific way, and that to me is the interesting piece of the horizontal world. And I think there are some that bridge the gap interestingly. Costco is a good example. You can both list-based Costco and horizontal it. YouTube is a great example. You can go to YouTube to learn how to fix your toilet, where you can spend 7 hours on YouTube going down a rabbit hole about the Spanish-American War. There's a whole bunch of different things that there are assets that can do both, but I really do think the fundamental battle of the 2020s is going to be between vertically organized commerce and horizontally organized commerce. And that's the more we can start to think about the click models versus the scroll models, how they're different, how the shopper journey is different in each of those, and then where and how we reach people in that journey. I think that's the interesting piece.
Bryan, I was shopping just this morning at a horizontal retailer, a grocer in Connecticut. They're called Stu Leonard's.
Yes, indeed. We have a Stu Leonard's in Paramus, New Jersey now, so we are. It's a whole new world here. So yes, if to any of our audience, if you haven't been to a Stu Leonard's, it is a magnificent experience. Nothing comparable that I've seen. I can tell you exactly what it's like. For those of you in Texas, if HEB Central Market went to a Dead concert and dropped acid, it would be Stu Leonard's.
That is the best explanation I've ever
Shree, I think we have our Insta clip for this episode.
There you go. So that's Wegmans has learned a ton from Stu Leonard's over the years, as all of the high-end grocery formats in the U.S. that are experiential and racetrack based to some degree owe a debt of gratitude to Stu Leonard and his family.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So back to the topic at hand, 2020, and I know it's Shree's favorite topic. It's increasingly becoming mine. That's retail media. And let's look at this from the brand perspective. We are seeing brand media budgets and trade budgets colliding.
Yeah.
There is a need to control search, whether it belongs, the investment is no longer trade focused at the bottom of the funnel, but looking at the entirety of the funnel is critically important. The outcome is ultimately convergence. And the question is, in the meantime, there's a lot of battle going on. My question to you is this an issue? How should brands manage? What should they be focused on in 2021 now that they've had this tumultuous 2020 with e-commerce emerging, and this needs to be a place where they need to get some alignment on what they're doing?
Well, I think this is going to be, I think this became immediately, I think it became evident to everybody in 2020, but there were different problems to solve. So it didn't become this wasn't the burning platform everybody had to put out. I mean, you way more short-term, significant business critical things. But at Omnicom Commerce Group, which is where I work now, and this is a big piece for us. And I just wrote a piece for the Path to Purchase Institute magazine that'll come out, I think, tomorrow. Will come out by the time this podcast is out, about this idea of convergence. And look, I think where shopper and conversion marketing sits is kind of like, a good sized boat, but sitting in between two enormous bodies of water that are coming together, which is media budgets on one side and trade budgets on the other. And, if you've ever seen pictures of what what Cape Horn looks like, which is where the Atlantic and the Pacific come together off the coast of South America, or is that the Cape of Good Hope? I always get confused. But it's uncomfortable sailing, to put it charitably, and trying to navigate this convergence of two massive bodies of water is going to require a really good boat and really skilled sailors. And the really good boat is going to be around what's the right data system that sits on top of this that allows you to at least look at the data sets that people are using to make decisions in one place with an eye towards eventually integrating those into one platform. And that's one of the things I'm working on here at Omnicom, is a platform called SIMS, which is the Commerce Investment Management System, which lets us do that. The other piece is, from a skills point of view, is just having people that, one, know enough about how the other part of the boat, the other ocean works, to be able to be conversant in it. But what I really think you're going to need, particularly anything that's related to the discipline that was, the artist formerly known as shopper, which is probably now a symbol or something like that. But that whole discipline around conversion marketing and shopper marketing, the skill set there is both around technical capability to be able to mine the data, but also kind of a holistic mindset to be able to look at different data sets and understand how they should fit together. So a real understanding of people that can get comfortable with multiple definitions of success are going to be extraordinarily useful, given the fact that they may be having a conversation around, the ROI on an end cap in one meeting, and then being part of a brand's multi-$100 million digital media plan the next hour, and the ability to shift gears in both of those conversations and to know where and how their perspective provides input into that, I think is going to be one of the absolutely critical competencies. And one
Bryan,
of the things
don't you see that as a major talent challenge for the CPG industry brewing? Because the way we've defined the industry is we've got salespeople and we've got marketing people, and the twain shall never collide.
Yeah, and I think too, even within marketing, I think that divide is probably a little more pronounced. So you've got people with, the people that were the marketers that were assigned to the Walmart team for a CPG company, for instance. These were classic brand marketers doing a retail rotation to learn how to talk to retailers, and then went back to their business of, making ads and, supervising images and all the stuff that brand marketers used to do that they knew the retail side. You've got a media competency, which is actually a different competency than marketing. And I think that's going to be the interesting one, is what are the people that sit at desks all day and click on investment curves and place media? How does that skill set weave its way into the brand marketing skill set and the sales skill set? But yeah, it is a real talent gap. I do think, interestingly, once you get through the fact that there's a completely different set of expectations, I think media teams and sales teams will have an easier time talking to each other than brand teams and sales teams. Because I do think that media teams, as the retail marketing ecosystem becomes more digital, the media ecosystem they're going to start to realize, it's going to be like that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. They're going to start to realize that they're doing a lot of the same stuff, just coming at it from a very different perspective. So I'm optimistic over time that retail media is going to act as a piece of translation software between media and retail for organizations in a way that will let them plan better. But that does get you to an interesting question about how brands should manage it. Because I think, look, there's a natural and understandable defensiveness, one from the customer teams around having media people come in that don't understand retail and are telling them how to spend money or co-opting budgets and deploying them. And that's fair. Over time, that spend is all going to end up in the media world. There's just, and that's, and maybe that's just my changing of seat over the last 9 months.
I couldn't agree more. And it's going to challenge the fiefdoms of paid budgets.
Well, if you'd ask me, and
Bryan,
the funny thing is,
if I might,
go ahead, Peter. Yeah, sorry.
Shri and I have been debating this with a number of people over some recent episodes.
Yeah.
Do you see 2021 as the year that, because of the importance of Amazon media in particular, you see the Amazon team at a lot of major brands shift from sales to the marketing organization?
I think that's yes, but I think for a slightly different reason. So, and let's come back to that, because let's just finish this. Because I think it was Joe Esposito at Criteo who said this to me once, and it was a kind of an eye opener, which was he just said, as an offhand comment, he goes, look, money follows easy, and that I think is an inexorable rule. The media business at a CPG company is one where they're gonna make the money they spend fit the model they use. And I think that's where that's going to be the push for Amazon, for Walmart, for Kroger, for Target, for everybody, is to build a model that looks more like the thing that a media buyer is used to clicking on and buying from their desktop. Money follows easy. So I think that's where the money's going to go, and I think that's got some interesting implications for Amazon, which is, as I said, I can't remember where I actually made this prediction, but it was a while ago. Where eventually, yes, I just think there's more to do with the Amazon marketing side than with the Amazon merchandise, than the 1P, your vendor manager, right? I mean, Amazon vendor manager, they're smart people and they're super great, but most of what they're doing is pretty algorithmic. And they're always saying, look, stop showing up here, stop calling me. If you keep calling, my boss is going to think something's wrong. I'm going to get fired. So just let the algorithm do it. That's what we're here for. Somebody very wise once told me that, the difference between Amazon and other companies is that at Amazon, the people exist to help the computers do their job, not the other way around. And I think that's very true. I think in media, though, there's more planning, there's more human intervention, and there's a little bit more. I think that's where the strategy is going to be. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if between now and 2025, your primary point of contact with Amazon is a media planner, and then they're the Amazon team leader for your business, and then the people that handle merchandising operations and supply chain all report up to that person, in the same way that supply chain, data analytics people reported up to a Walmart team leader who for years was usually a salesperson. So, and they had to learn new skills. The media planners running the Amazon team are going to need to learn new skills. But, I would guess that of the top 50 CPG companies that sell to Amazon in 2025, 30 of them will have an Amazon team that's led by a media planner. So that's my guess.
So Bryan,
again, blurring the line between the 2020 recap and the predictions again.
We see eye to eye with you on this stuff. It's insane how close our thought processes are. And I do feel in the long run, it's the sales organizations, the customer teams that are going to get shortchanged, because you mentioned earlier, the marketers get their retail rotation. So they get to live the world of what it is to be at a customer and experience shopper marketing, even if it's only for 18, 24 months. It's rare that a salesperson from a customer team actually goes on to a brand. And the hardest skills in the room today are actually understanding that level of media that you just carefully described over here.
I think that'll become more common over time. And I think Amazon's different, because, not to shortchange Whole Foods, but Amazon's brick and mortar presence is trivial in the context of their total business. For the primarily brick and mortar online retailers, I think the team construction will be different. And I do think that those teams might be led by an experienced, quote unquote, salesperson who has spent significant time in the media side of stuff. And they've done their media rotation in the way that a marketer used to do their sales rotation. I think the function actually that gets shortchanged is what I would call non-analytic brand marketing. Like those are the people I don't understand what their job is going forward. And I'm not alone in that. So that's a piece where that function to me seems to be the one that's the classic role of the CMO is going to be a really interesting one. Let's just put it that way. Because I think the CMO and they're look, nobody likes to talk about themselves more than CMOs. So there's 75 million articles about the role of the CMO, the changing role of the CMO. There are half the podcasts in the world are CMOs talking to other CMOs about being CMOs. So there's a lot of data to draw from here. But their role is really changing. And a lot of what they used to do is, a lot of the media buying is straight up algorithms and economics. A lot of the creative is being dynamically driven in ways that requires less human intervention. I think that's an interesting job to me, between the CTO, the CFO, the head of media, and the head of sales. The CMO to me appears to be the one that's probably at the greatest risk of having their wings clipped. And that's been a trend that's continued from the last 5 years.
There we go, guys. 2 big takeaways from the boss's mouth himself. One, if you're in the brand marketing landscape and make data your best friend. Get down dirty in the weeds. Understand the in and outs of how media buying actually takes place. You can't simply outsource it and be the one that manages high-level creative. And the second one is, if you're on a commercial sales team, ask for a rotation in the brand. Go be part of the brand and get to both the creative side and, most importantly, the media side of the fence. It will be a weapon, which actually leads me to question number 5, Bryan.
Yes.
And I've often called it the kryptonite of large brands, and that is direct to consumer. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. It turns the P&L upside down, because D2C, you become a retailer. I mean, there's no magic here that the P&L is going to be dilutive, even though people keep asking the question, does D2C make my P&L dilutive? And I just don't know how to answer that anymore, because yes, you're a retailer. It automatically will, because you're actually in the business of fulfillment, but it's everywhere. And everyone
you're a 40 margin business that's competing with an 8 margin, or like a 3% net income business. Like,
there you go.
Yeah, it's there's no way to do that in a way that's margin accretive. So
the simple question, Bryan, on that one is, this trend has arrived. Everyone's talking about it. They're experimenting with it in some form, and experiment is the best word that I can kind of put out there. Yeah. Is it realistic to even sustain the experiments to capture first-party data?
I think experiments are great, and I think there's a couple of things with D2C. Number one, there are ways to look at D2C as a big brand, but you have to know what you're trying to do. And this is the thing where I think for too many years it was too easy. And Shri, you were on the receiving end of this. Where somebody senior to you would say, we need to go get first-party data. Cookies are going away. Apple's making private. We need to go get first-party data. So let's go D2C. And so then and then you'd pay McKinsey or somebody $1 gazillion to come in and explain to you what you just told them. Then McKinsey would say that, and now it's codified in organizational lore because McKinsey said it. And now all of a sudden, somebody in your job is handed, go get first-party data by building a D2C platform. And it's like, no. First-party data is an outcome, not a reason. That's like handing a football coach a playbook that says, go win the game by scoring more points than the other team. Cool. Except that I need to know how to do that and what the actual strategy is.
What a novel concept.
Yeah, what the parts are. And I think D2C for let's just take the hardest one, which is a big established brand with mass distribution. So let's start there. There are things D2C can do for a brand like that. You just have to know what they are, know what you're trying to accomplish. You can sell portfolio. You can try new items. You can build engagement with a brand in a whole bunch of ways. You can, the one thing you can't do is just sell your basic product slightly more expensively than Walmart does and expect anybody to buy it because they're conveniently on your website where they never are. So I think that with D2C, there are kind of a few key rules to success for a big brand. Number one, don't make data the objective. Make data an outcome. So data is generated by engagement, right? Engagement is the strat. How do you build engagement with the brand in a D2C way? What's the strategy to do that? Whether you think it is whether you're trying to use other platforms as a way to engage people in the brand and bring them back to your brand site, whether you're trying to solve a specific problem for a consumer, whether you're trying to sell a regimen, whether you're trying to experiment with new items and make your community feel like they're a part of the new item development process. There's a lot of things you can do, but I think the key thing to keep in mind is that you are either using this as a way to broaden the brand's appeal, or you're using it the way Lubomira Rocher from L'Oreal puts it, which is as an investment in customer experience research and development. And that's why I think the experiment is fine. If you thought about D2C as R&D rather than as a commercial platform, you would think about it completely differently. And I think for large established brands that have massive physical distribution, thinking of D2C as anything but an R&D tool to me just seems weird. Like, I don't know why you would do that. So, and then your P&L expectations for it are different. And then, you want to optimize your R&D spend because you're a smart person and you don't want to blow a bunch of money. But you know what you're trying to do is really about research and development. That it's really about deepening your understanding from which you're going to extract meaningful data. And then the P&L side of it is, how do we use that data to buy media more effectively? How does a more granular understanding of our target audience save us money from a media point of view? How do we think about what the role, because that in the end is what we're all trying to do in the media side, is to get to more granular audience definitions that allow less waste in the process. So if you took that as the holistic P&L for D2C and looked at D2C as an R&D spend that can save me money in terms of how I buy media, that's where the P&L makes sense. But if you're looking at it as a standalone transactional business that's going to generate margins that are the same as selling to Walmart, that's somewhere between difficult and delusional, depending on the brand. So
tomorrow on the CPG Guys, the conclusion of our conversation with Bryan Gildenberg from Omnicom Group. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.